I'm Sarah Baldwin from Bella Luna Toys, and I'm also a Waldorf early childhood teacher. And I'm going to demonstrate today wet on wet watercolor painting as it's practiced in Waldorf education, and particularly in a Waldorf kindergarten. We'll start with watercolor paper. This is heavy weight, 140 weight paper, artist grade. We really like to paint with the finest quality materials with children because the results are so much more beautiful and more satisfying. What I've done is I've put a couple of sheets to soak in this basin here. Now you could use a plastic basin like this, or you could also just use a sink or even a tub to soak your paper in, but you want to make sure that the paper can lie flat in it. It should easily fit to the paper. And when you put your paper in, be sure to put in one sheet at a time. You'll want one sheet for each person who's going to paint, for one for each child and one for each parent or teacher. So just lay them in separately, so otherwise they, if you just took out a big chunk and put them in, they could stick together. We want to avoid that. And we'll want to let the paper soak for a good 10 minutes or so, ideally. Paper, when it's new, comes with a sizing material on it, and by soaking it, it removes that. It will allow the paper to dry flat when we're done. So while my paper is soaking, I'm going to prepare my paints. Now these are Stockmar watercolor paints. We sell them at Bella Luna Toys. They're made in Germany. They're very high quality. This is the kind of paint that's used by most Waldorf schools. But you could also use tubes, watercolor paint from an art supply store that come in tubes will work just as well. In either case, they're very highly concentrated pigments, and we're going to dilute these with water before we paint. And while I taught, all the years I taught in a Waldorf kindergarten, we only ever painted with 3 colors. Carmine red, a lemon yellow, and an ultramarine blue. And with these 3 colors, we can mix any colors we want, create all the colors of the rainbow, and the children will learn a lot about color through this process without our even speaking about it. So what I will start with some of the red, and it's not an exact science. I'm often asked, how much paint, how much water? I've never measured. What I do is this: I just put a dollop in my jar. And this is a half pint size jar, one cup. I've added water, and I like to mix it with a chopstick and mix it well. The pigments are kind of heavy, so they like to sit at the bottom of the jar. And then I'll take my brush and just test the intensity of color. I'd like to use a scrap piece of paper. And see how it looks on the paper. Now some teachers like to paint with the colors kind of thin and pastel. I really like to paint with bright colors to give the children a real color experience. So that looks a little bit weak to me, so I'm going to add just a little bit more pigment. And I'm mixing these in larger jars. This, as I said, this is a half pint size jar. This is going to be much more than I need to paint on one painting day with the children. I'm going to cover these when I'm done and refrigerate them, and this will keep for a good long time, weeks or months. They'll keep months up in the fridge. But you might want, if you're just going to paint one time and don't know when you'll paint again, you could mix just a tiny bit of paint and a little bit of water in these smaller jars, which we're going to paint with. And I'll test again. There, now, that's a nice deep red. I like that red. So the red is mixed. And then you just do the same with the other two colors, with the blue and the yellow. So now I've mixed the other two colors the same way. I've got my red, yellow, and blue, and they're all in the concentrations that I like. I might prepare all this ahead of time before the children arrive. Depending on how old your children are, they could also help with this process. They could help mix the paints. But then before I would give the paint to the children, before we begin to paint, I put just a little bit of each color in the bottom of the jar. No more than that. Any more than that, it will just get wasted. And then I would cover this jar, as I said, and refrigerate that to use on the next painting day.